Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today's webinar, Voice to Impact, Escalating with Confidence, with Sonia Pineda. She is the AR and Collections Supervisor with Acuren. This webinar is hosted by Handle's Building Blocks community. My name is Lori Drake, and I am the Building Blocks Community Manager. For those not familiar with Handle, we do have a platform that is purposely built for building materials suppliers. We focus on lien rights management, job and bond research, waiver compliance, and a dedicated payment portal. If you are interested in hearing more about Handle or about the Building Blocks community, please shoot me a message in the chat box, or you can reply to the follow-up event email that I'm going to be sending out. On that note, I will be sending an email after this event. It's going to have a copy of the presenter slides, as well as a recording of this event for your convenience. I'm excited today to welcome Sonia Pineda. She's the AR and Collections Supervisor with Acuren. She was newly promoted to this position just a couple months ago, so congratulations on that. With over 7 years in the credit and accounting field, she recently stepped into this role and stepped off with the ground running. She presented this very topic to her team and had such a great response that we knew we had to bring it to the wider community. Sonia, thank you for joining us today, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I'll go ahead and get started. That was a great introduction from Lori. I have nothing to add. Today, I do want to talk about why our voices as collectors matter. Too many times we, as collectors, get a lot of pushback when trying to recommend next action when we are unsuccessful collecting past due amounts. So a few things we're going to talk about is why our voices matter, the cost of hesitation, some common confidence wobble points where we struggle, and what actually makes a strong recommendation. Some sample statements, how to handle pushback, and like Lori said, a Q&A at the end. So we are credit risk managers. Sometimes we are very quiet in the background because we're working our aging and busy calling customers, sending emails. So we're often the first to spot financial red flags. Our insight and recommendations shape how the business responds. Speaking up early helps prevent losses. Confident guidance protects cash flow, reputation, and ultimately avoids bad debt write-offs. We don't have to take that complete loss. Clear professional escalations show leadership, ownership, and drive accountability across teams. So it's important that we speak up. It's important that our sales departments, operations departments, that they can tell that they can trust us with our recommendations. The cost of hesitation. So aging doesn't pause while we wait for things to work themselves out. Aging just gets older and older. Customers read our silence as permission to delay or deprioritize payment. You know, if we don't reach out for payment, they're not going to be in a hurry to pay us. They're probably going to be in a hurry to pay the vendor that is calling them every week, twice a week, because that's where they're feeling the pressure. The sales and operations teams assumes there's no issue if we don't raise our hand. They are too busy getting more customers in, sending out invoices. Meanwhile, the risk quietly grows if we don't say anything. Some common confidence wobble points. I noticed that a pattern while working in Acuren with our team is that we tend to ask a lot of questions, and that's where our weakness is. It's when we ask questions, it sounds like we're not very sure of what we're trying to say. We're not very sure of the analysis we're giving our sales department. So just some examples. Instead of saying, do you think we should, start with, I recommend we, and then whatever your recommendation is. They still haven't paid. What should we do? Don't leave it up to them. What should we do? They're going to say, call them one more time. Oh, I'll give them a call. We'll follow up next week. Instead, given the risk, I recommend we escalate to third-party collections or put them on credit hold, whatever the case is. A very common one, they're over their PO. Maybe we stop service. We're asking the question, but we know the answer. We want to stop service until we get the money in. So instead of asking them, we should say they have exceeded their PO limit. I recommend we hold orders. Another one, they promised again. Should we wait? And a confident upgrade to that one would be they have defaulted on multiple promises. I recommend XYZ, whatever your recommendation is. So to summarize this, less questions, more, we should do this. I think, or I'm confident that, we have exceeded our collection efforts and we need to take the next action. So what makes a strong recommendation? Here are some key elements to a strong message. So the sentences and parentheses, they're all broken up. It's one full message, and I broke it up just to explain the process. So one, we state the issue clearly. ABC company has an outstanding balance of $85,000 with $50,000 over 180 days. Clear cut, just facts. That's what's on our aging. Number two, explain the impact, the risk to the company. Despite repeated follow-ups, no payments have been made, increasing our risk exposure. And then what action do you recommend? With confidence, I recommend we stop service immediately and escalate to leadership for resolution. And then the most important one, the one that will really solidify your recommendation, you have to back it up with data. They cannot argue with facts. What kind of data? So the aging breakdown, just whatever your company uses as an AR report is the perfect place to look first. What's their total outstanding balance? In what aging buckets do those balances live? The older, the harder it is to collect. And what percent of balance is in the 90 to 180 buckets? These are very high risk. Another thing is payment history. When was their last payment date and amount? Do they pay? Are they regular payments? Are they erratic? Do they pay once every couple of months? Or maybe we received a big payment today, but we're not going to see, another payment until the end of the year or something, which is not very convenient, especially if, the invoices are aging by bucket. And the history of broken promises, if any, or failed payment plans. What I think is probably the most important, I guess, I love to say the best for last, is communication logs, your AR notes, whatever your company uses to document your attempts to call, email, their responses or lack of responses, any escalations or approvals that you have already requested in the past. All this will help you bring your recommendation to your internal team, and there will be a lot of less questions asked or a lot less pushback, even if they want to. We understand why our sales team wants to keep it friendly. They want the business, they want to keep the relationships, but do we really want to keep relationships that are hurting the company? Is what the message we're trying to relay. Some sample statements. These are just some messages. It could be an email or a conversation you have, very concise, full of facts, nothing emotional in here. So XYZ Corporation is 120 days past due for $16,000. They've missed 3 promise dates and are now unresponsive. I recommend we escalate the account to third-party collections. So it has our 3 key elements. Our 4th one is back it up with data, but you attach that to the email. The next one, and these are all 3 different scenarios, guys. I know there's so many different situations that we run into every day. DF Group owes $88,000 with $50,000 in the 90 plus day bucket. They are a key account, but have missed 2 payment commitments. I recommend a temporary hold pending a partial payment or formal repayment plan. And the last one, ABC Inc. has exceeded their PO limit by $30,000 and has unpaid invoices aging over 90 days. To avoid further exposure without authorization, I recommend we stop work until payment and updated PO is received. So there's no questions asked here, nothing but statements. This is what's happening, and this, and the last sentence is, this is what I recommend needs to happen next. And even though I try to put a pretty bow on top of it and say, yeah, this is going to work, we're still going to get pushback, guys. You might have a great team that already trusts you completely with your decisions and will say, yeah, thank you for, sending everything over. Let's do it. But we will have, those departments where they will try to do everything but upset the customer. And it's understanding to a certain extent. So how do we handle pushback? We acknowledge concerns and stay fact-based. I understand they're a valued customer, but with $50,000 over 90 days past due, continuing service increases our risk exposure. So right here, what I did was I redirected it to the risk exposure. And then we offer a path forward. So if operations believe an exception should be made, I recommend they escalate for leadership sign-off. So let's say you presented your recommendation, it's solid, you still get the pushback, you do these three things: you acknowledge their concerns, stay fact-based, and redirect them to the risk exposure, and offer a path forward. That person, I'm sure, has a boss also. So I guess to cover ourselves, we always need to be careful. Like, yes, we might not always have the last word. We might not always be the ones to make the decisions. We're the ones to offer our recommendations based on our professional analysis. So request a leadership sign off. Say, okay, well, if your manager can sign off on this and my manager can sign off on this, then there might be a path forward to keep servicing this account. The more eyes, the more leadership eyes the more leadership people that have eyes on the risk exposure, the better, because like I said, you're staying fact-based. You're not picking on the customer. You just want to make sure that the business is protected. Our business is protected. I didn't mean to move on too quick, guys. I did want to pause here and ask if anybody has, which I know it's a dumb question. I'm sure everybody here has handled or received any kind of pushback when trying to escalate an account. I want to hear what was the situation and how did you handle it? Lori, do you prefer to them to drop it in the chat?
We're doing good on time. So if you want to go ahead and take yourself off mute, I think that would be fine. We shouldn't have too much overlap there. But yeah, I would love to hear what pushback people have had as well and kind of how they dealt with that. So please feel free to take yourself off mute and join in the conversation.
So, Lori, this is Deanna at Acor.
Hi.
This isn't from me, but I have a person that I sit on a lot of groups with. And she had this great form that she put together. So when she sits down with her operations or she sits down with her manager or whatever, and they want to end run her decision after she's given them all this stuff, she has a form that they have to fill out, and that form goes up to the CEO, and the CEO has to sign off on it. And she's had great success with some of her operations guys going, well, I don't really want to do that. And she's like, well, if you want this to happen, then you have to do this. So it puts kind of the onus back on them, because then it is taking it up to the C-suite or whomever your department reports to, but it's bringing more eyes into it. As you were saying, it's bringing more eyes into it. And then your your CEO or whomever it is that you have sign off on this has the final say. And they're going to ask those hard questions. And then they're going to know that at the end of the day, it's that operations manager or that manager or whomever that wanted us to take this risk, instead of going back to the credit or AR department and saying, why did you approve this? Now they know who wanted it to happen and who at the end of the day is held responsible. And I thought that was a great way to kind of mitigate some of this.
I absolutely love that, Deanne. It's a great system to just stay professional and say, hey, we have to follow the process. You want to go ahead and sign off and keep selling, we got to fill this form out, have CEO sign off. And like you said, they're not going to want to do that because then their decisions will be questioned. Thank you for sharing, Dan. That is really cool. And I will be sharing that with my group as well and say, hey guys, what do you think about this?
Ashley, I see you joined the team. Would you like to speak?
I was just gonna say, a way that I've handled pushback is like an escalation process. Definitely do all those three things that you have on there: acknowledge concerns, redirect the risk exposure. But if we're still getting continued pushback, definitely escalating that to leadership so everybody aware of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's not always easy to find who has the final say in this, but in cases like this where we have to protect the company's finances, we have to follow that process, like you said, and get that leadership sign off. Thank you.
This is
Ash.
nice to hear as well, because there's so many teams that are remote now that you don't even have that in-person interaction to join in the sales meetings and have those conversations, or even in your own team meetings. I mean, getting stuff in writing seems to be valuable these days for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel you, Lori.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Like I said, please feel free to take yourself off mute. Looks like you're good to go.
Okay, thank you guys for sharing. So some final thoughts. I might have been gone fast through this. It felt a little fast. So you see the risk first is the point. Your voice is the first line of protection. We don't just skim through spreadsheets. We have to, wave those red flags and say, hey, there's something not right here. And confidence isn't about being loud and ugly and mean. It's just about being clear, being clear, concise, and have them understand exactly what is needed, what the next action needs to be. And then when you deliver strong recommendations, it's very important to remember you're protecting your company's revenue. You're supporting your team internally and the customers as well. And you build trust and credibility. Your sales team and operations team, I promise you, they do not hate you. They are very grateful that we are there, to protect the money that they are bringing into the company. So my final thought is just don't wait for permission to speak up. Your insight is the red flag that prevents the fire.
That's a great final thought. I like that.
Thank you, Lori.
We do have a comment in the chat. It said, I have some input on pushback. Can you let me know? Absolutely. Please go ahead and take yourself off mute. It doesn't say your name, so I'm just going to say go ahead and take yourself off mute.
Cindy Baker with Pool Corp.
Hi, Cindy.
Hey.
One of the things that through my years that I found was extremely helpful is I kind of phrase it as, explain to them why it's important to them. And one of the key factors that seems to really make an impact is depending on what position they hold, depends on what type of incentive plan they get. Well, when you have accounts that are past due, that impacts their incentive plan because, it goes to gross because we have like interest on AR, that's past due in certain columns and write-offs and all that kind of stuff. And so when I'm explaining something to them, I said, okay, guys, this is where you're at. Okay, right now in July, you've got this much in there for potential, bad debt write-off stuff. This is how much money you've already put out for write-offs. This is what we've recovered on anything. You're in the red by this amount. Here's all that other information, like you guys were given, all the information on payment, all that kind of stuff. If we continue to do this and don't do it, and we continue to roll with this, it continues to be past due and not get paid. This is going to impact your profit by such and such dollar amount. And that hits their pocket, right? And so they're like, oh. And they stop and think, because that has a personal impact on them, not just the business, but a personal impact, because it'll impact the amount of their bonus.
That is perfect, Cindy. And I promise you, if they were pushing back and they were not listening before you gave them that that profit number, they are listening now.
Yeah, that's what I say. I always would tell my teams that, guys, one of the biggest helpers here is understanding why, when you're talking to somebody, what will make it important to them to understand it. Sometimes it's their bonus, sometimes it's something else. It just kind of depends. But sitting there ranting and raving or going on about this and blah blah blah, they're kind of like da, 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 da. They're not listening.
Right.
And they won't listen until you've said something that impacts them, and it makes it important to them. Then they're all ears.
Yeah, of course. They don't want to miss their bonus.
No, they don't want to do that. They're not. It's like I always tell people, like when they do, really wrong decisions, like holding a ticket or whatever. I said, is that customer relationship and that customer's business important enough to you to lose your job for doing something you shouldn't do?
That's a great point.
And they're like, I said, I'm just asking. You don't need to give me an answer, but think about that. Just like, and they think like, oh crap, I never thought about it like that. It's like, well, because it does. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Cindy. That is a great point. I like that. Find something that is important to them and leverage that.
Right.
That's yeah.
And if your company is a I just completely dropped what the name is. That we have stock. What is that?
Public
trading company. Yeah, I was like, God, I just drew a blank for a second.
Mhm.
A lot of times that helps out too, because a lot of times people, when we have stock up, we have stock and stuff in the company and things like that. And a lot of times they'll look at AR collections and all that kind of stuff. Like, well, that doesn't matter to you. No. Yes, it does. Because see, I buy stock. Okay. and the net profit is what's important. So if we allow these things to happen, it doesn't just affect you, like maybe on your incentive plan or in your sales budget, right? It also affects me and my incentive plan. But most importantly is it affects my my stuff on my stocks, because if we're not profitable, the stock goes down. The stock goes down, guess what else happens? If you're not making much money, you're not making a profit, well, then the amount of money to get raises or whatever, that's down. Growth to improve, have more people or whatever, that goes down. So it will personally affect me and my plan for retirement if it's going. And they're like, I mean, I've had to do that before. And some people, they're just looking at me like, oh, so yeah. So it is to everybody. If you buy stock, it's not just your job or personal. Now you're going into your retirement plan stuff,
Yeah, it's a
with
huge
all the
number.
companies that are getting bought out too. That's going to be a huge thing now these days.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just try to look at things all the time from a different perspective. Just instead of just work, find things that they can relate to with and their personal things. Like some people don't understand how to read a P&L. They're like, well, I don't understand this and that. And years ago, I put together something like using like your paycheck. Okay, well, this is what your gross amount equals to this. This is what this is. Responsible expenses are blah blah blah. This kind of expenses are blah blah blah. And they would get it then, understanding what can change. Like your electricity bill, whatever, those can they're still going to be there no matter what. But your credit card to Kohl's or whatever, you can control that.
Yes.
Cut back things like that. And so that's kind of like how they were understanding the P&L. These are things you can control. These are whatever. And when you're all done at the end, this is what your net pay is, and this is what your savings are. And they would all understand it in that realm. So that's something I've always found is very helpful, is kind of put it in layman terms, I guess, so to speak.
Thank you, everybody. We hope to see you at the next one.